Namaste and a heartfelt welcome to this discovery session and really diving into what is the real cause of our anxiety, our stress, and our burnout. And so many of you have been writing in that you're living in a constant state of anxiety, worry, that you can't sleep at night because these stories of these issues that you're worried about are constantly playing in your mind. And so in this session, we're going to be diving into what's really causing that. And I'm going to put out a radical concept here. What if all the external circumstances that seem to be the cause of your anxiety, your stress, your burnout, your sleeplessness, your worry were not the real cause? What if the real cause was something much deeper? And what if it were possible not only to get to the real root cause of what's creating the external anxiety, but to finally bring that up to the surface and to clear it wholly and freely? And the journey was first born from my own direct experience of healing from a basketball-sized tumor. And one of the things that I learned in my own healing journey, which took 6.5 weeks' time, was a lot of the work and research going on in the field of cellular healing and into the field of epigenetics. And what they found is that when you feel an emotion and you repress it, it releases a quantifiable biochemistry into your bloodstream, which will go to certain cell receptors and block those cells, rendering those cells incapable of communicating with the rest of the cells in the body. And if over time illness happens, of course it happens where the cells are blocked. And conversely, what's also known to be true is that when we feel our emotions very openly and freely and naturally, like a child does, our cell receptors remain open. And so none of us were given a manual. We've got this for the last nearly 3 years. We're coming up to 3 years now of this pandemic and climate change, craziness happening in governments with autocracies forming where before there were democracies. And it's just been a wild ride. And it's easy to point the finger at all of these situations, saying that's the cause of my anxiety. I was speaking to one of our staff members, and he was sharing that he's in his mind, he's anxious about the rising cost of fuel, the rising cost of food. And I said, what if you were to take that out of the picture? That whole scenario that you're playing in your head, take that out of the picture, what's really here. And he felt sick to his stomach, and it was actually fear. And his constant being on this hamster wheel of playing the story, oh my God, with what's going to happen with the price of food going up, was actually a means of avoiding feeling what he was really feeling. And so all of us, none of us were given a manual how to deal with this huge, almost biblical proportion of catastrophe. And so it's easy to say it's all these external things that are causing my anxiety. But I want to suggest that you may already have fear stored inside of you, and that these external circumstances are actually triggering something that's already stored inside of you. For instance, let's say you're in a traffic jam and someone cuts you off, and out of nowhere, rage comes up. Now, that person didn't come in the middle of the night and stick rage inside of you. That road rage was already there inside of you. All that they did was push your button. They triggered so that this rage that was already stored inside your cells came roaring to the surface. So in our current life circumstances, life is triggering us all left and center. And so we're attaching all this emotion that's arising to the various circumstances. And so I wanted us all to get very real here and to go to a recent time where you found yourself trying to avoid feeling something, or that you've had worry constantly playing in your mind, or someone said something and a big reaction happened, or you had something occur in your life and out of nowhere fear happened. So go to a current circumstance that happened, let's say, in the last few months, where somehow you had a reaction, where something took place and you either shut down or you started to go into motion to avoid feeling what you were feeling, got on the web, started calling a friend up, got on Netflix, anything to avoid feeling it. So go to a specific circumstance where you got triggered, where something took place and you had a triggered reaction. So you may have read the news and prices of food are going up, and suddenly this constant worry is happening. And so where something external took place and you had a reaction that was an unhealthy reaction to it. Why don't we just discover what's really going on here? And let's close our eyes for a moment and just let your awareness go back through the last days, weeks, months, and some moment where you actually got triggered. And you had what I would call a stress reaction, where you either got angry or upset or scared or shut down, blocked it out. Someone said something, someone did something. But go back to that specific moment where you reacted and step into that memory. And how were you feeling as you were reacting? What were you doing? Really step into that moment of your fear reaction, your stress response. And now roll the cameras back to that millisecond right before you had that reaction, that stress reaction. Roll the cameras back just to that moment where there was this impulse to react or defend or run or blow up or upset. So there was this impulse. And now roll the cameras back to that moment prior to that reaction, to that impulse to react, and open up with what you were really feeling at that time. Prior to your reaction, what were you really feeling? And even if you're not sure what it was, just open with yourself. What was the real emotion that was here prior to your stress reaction? And as you open with that feeling, open into that feeling and go even deeper into the very core of that emotion. And if there were an even deeper emotion, what might that feeling be? And just opening with whatever that deeper feeling was. And if there were an even deeper one in the core of that, what might that feeling be? And just welcoming and allowing whatever's here and not here. And taking a nice deep breath in, letting it out, and opening your eyes. And okay, you had the reaction where you shouted at someone, or you shut down, you ran away, flew into motion, you did anything to avoid feeling, but you rolled the cameras back to the impulse to have that stress reaction. And you opened up and inquired prior to your reaction, what were you really feeling inside? And what were you really feeling inside? And just type that into the chat box right now. Just what was the feeling? And as you started to open with that feeling, what was the even deeper emotion? That were really the core of why you were reacting in a triggered way. One of the ways that we defend or avoid against feeling is that these emotions come up and we react as a form of defense. And yet these emotions are what are stored inside of you. And they probably came at a time when you were stressed out or hurt, or in the case of the person who said they felt abandoned, lonely, that when, as science found, you were at a peak of a strong emotion, if you shut it down at that moment, or if you swept it under the carpet or denied it was going on or pretended it wasn't happening, got on with your life and flew into motion, started avoiding it. If at the moment you were feeling a strong emotion and you repressed it, it released that quantifiable biochemistry into the bloodstream, and it went to certain cellular locations and blocked those cells. And then what happened was, when the next cell generation was born, the consciousness, the programming that was stored inside those cells, the cell memory, the emotional pain that you shut down, all of it, the unspoken words, what happened to you in that cell memory, then that consciousness, that programming got passed on to the next cell generation. So the next cell generation is then carrying the programming from the previous cell generation. And this programming goes on your whole life long. So when I had that basketball-sized tumor and I went in to go see the surgeon, she said it probably started as one cell when you were 8 years old, which then replicated. And of course, I was 39 years old at the time when this happened, but in the 3 months leading up to seeing the surgeon, the cells started replicating aggressively, exponentially. And by the time I got to the doctor's office, I looked like I was 6 months pregnant, though I knew I wasn't. And so it's been known for a long time that this programming gets passed on from one cell generation to the next. And what the great gift was in my own healing journey was I found a means for all of us to go on a journey inside your body to specific cellular locations to get access to the stored cell memory there, to the old consciousness that's stored there, the old programming, the unspoken words, the hurt, the blame, the shame, and to go through a radical and very practical, down-to-earth process of release and letting go and ultimately forgiveness, so that when new cells are born, they're born devoid of that old consciousness as new regenerative cells. And so the work was originally born from my own experience of healing. And now here we are about 30 years later. That was in 1992. And the work is now being used in hospitals and by medical doctors, psychiatrists, and people for all walks of life to really get to what is the emotional root cause that has co-created illness and disease. But there's also an emotional root cause to what is creating the stress in your life. Because I promise you, it's not the external circumstances. They didn't put that fear there. Instead, what happens, the emotion comes up and we look for an answer. Why am I feeling this fear, this sadness, this loneliness, this abandonment? Why am I feeling helpless and lost? And oh, it's because the food prices are going up. It's because my husband lost their job. It's because, and so we attach it to a story. And then we take residence in that story and we keep playing that story over and again, which creates an underlying anxiety and stress response, which eventually burns us out. And with the journey, we're not interested in the external circumstances. We're interested in what you think is causing your stress. We're interested in getting to the emotional root cause, to the cell memories that are stored inside your body, and to clearing it at the deepest level.